So for our YouTube viewers, we now have a graphic from our OptaStats tool showing midfielders and forwards at 6 million and above ranked by expected points over the past 4 game weeks. This shows Jamie Vardy right at the top on 31.7 expected points. Bamford second on 30.1. Then Grealish, Fernandes, Jota, Salah, De Bruyne, Mane. A lot of very, very expensive options in there. So, Adam, the question to you is, how do we pick out which expensive players we can afford and the ones that we need in our team? What are your thoughts?
It's really tough, isn't it? And I think it's the one question that's really got me this season, because like you've mentioned, there's reasons to pick pretty much all of the players that you've mentioned. So if we start with the Spurs players, Kane and Son, I think Kane's stats have dropped a little bit, particularly the XG side in the last 4. But I don't think he's not blanked, has he, since game week 1? I think that's right. And he's finding a way to get points. So he's hard to drop. And but I suppose the only caveat that I would say is that that he's unlikely to continue the level of getting points. I think it will slow down, and the fixtures are tough. I think Son, could he suit this counter? The Spurs have got Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal. Could be some opportunities to counter-attack. Kane dropping deep and playing him in. So Son, as you mentioned, could offer us great value throughout the whole season. So I'm reluctant to get rid of him. And then you've got the ones that most people are talking about. Salah's back. KDB is coming into some incredible fixtures. Those that don't fancy KDB, the Sterling. You've then got Bruno. I think it's really, really difficult to pick. And I actually think it could, I think there's a huge, huge opportunity here to make some ground or go differential. I think the one player that I do really like and want to have in my team, I think, is Bruno, because I don't own him, and I've seen enough of him now to know that he's just a points machine. He finds a way of getting points, and Man United have to play him because they're such a different team without him. I think penalties, let's just face it, United are going to get a load of penalties. Deserve it or not, doesn't matter. They'll get a load of penalties. So I think Bruno is probably the one that I like the most. And I think because of fixtures, I think a few people that have bought him may consider selling him for Salah, De Bruyne, and I have seen murmurs of that. An interesting stat that I like with Bruno, he's played 10 away games. I think he's got 10 goals, 6 assists. Incredible. That's just him. And he's got 24 returns in 22 games for Man United. I think we've seen enough to realise he's the real deal in FPL. And I think even if the stats aren't quite there, he'll find a way to get points. So I really like Bruno. City haven't quite got going yet, but it's hard to argue against the fixtures. And as we're talking off air with KDB, he's going to get returns in those fixtures, you would think, but then it's quite feasible that if they're 2-0 up, he gets taken off and rested for the last 30 minutes. So I'm not as hot on KDB as I am on Bruno, because I think every time United score, you just got a feeling he's gonna be involved, and you're not going to have to worry about him starting as well or getting the odd rest. I think Salah coming back is interesting. I mean, what I think, probably just to pass it over to you on this, because we've met, and we can go back and talk about Bruno and KDB in a minute, but I think Liverpool are a really interesting team to discuss, not just Salah, but Jota, Mane as well. What are your thoughts about them? Because their fixtures are actually pretty good.
Yeah. So I'm very much a player, an FPL manager who tries to look for value, which works at times and does on others, right? But I kind of look at it. So I've got Robertson. Obviously, I'm really happy with Robertson, especially now. I've held on to him all this time, and I'm probably thinking about bringing in Jota. I haven't had Salah all season. I'm not really interested in having Salah all season. I haven't been interested in having Salah all season. Obviously, after game week 1, when I didn't own him, that was a bit of a kick in the teeth to start off with like a 5 million rank, right? But other than that, I think that Jota for value, he's going to start, surely. He's been in absolutely scintillating form.
I agree, yeah.
And I think that, obviously, while Salah and Jota, for example, is a really good double up, I think there are so many other options elsewhere. You've mentioned Son, Bruno. You can't have everyone, right? I think that Jota can match Salah for value. Now, I don't think you can match him for points. I think that Salah will always be the premium option in points. But let's just say, for example, over the next 7 or 8 games, I like to look at games in blocks. Right? I think the short-term thinking of one game week all the time doesn't help matters when you're trying to analyze a kind of rank over a period of time. And I think that if Salah scores, let's say he scores 50 points in the next 8 games, if he scores 50 points, it means Liverpool are scoring goals, right? And if Liverpool are scoring goals, then Jota is likely to be involved as well. So I think, and this is my thinking with Son and Kane as well a little bit. So if Salah scores 50 points, Jota scores 35 to 40, I think for those 15 points, you can put the 6 million elsewhere. The only caveat to that is the captaincy option in game week 12 against Fulham. But again, I don't want to base my whole team around one captaincy in one game week, because he could blank or someone else could score as many as him as well. So I think because there are alternatives to Salah for a much cheaper price in that Liverpool team, if you look at Robertson and Jota over this run, I expect them to perform very well. And combined, they cost roughly the same as Salah, right? Now, is it fair to say you think that Robertson and Jota combined over the next 4 will outscore one person in Salah? I'd say they probably would. I don't know what you think about that.
I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Would you said about captaincy?
Yeah.
So let's look at that Fulham game. Would you look to bring in Salah or Mane, or would you trust Jota with the captaincy, or even look out elsewhere?
I'd look elsewhere. If there were, other really good options, I would look elsewhere, but I wouldn't have anything with putting it on Jota that week. And this is the thing, right? So if Liverpool go out and score 3, 4, 5 goals, the odds on Jota is going to be involved as well. So it's not like, Salah has banged in a hat-trick and Jota will get nothing. I find that incredibly unlikely. My thoughts on that?
I think another way to look at Jota, if they were and this is a really good way of thinking of things now, because value can get in the way of decisions, I think. Because sometimes you could look at Jota and think he's too cheap. I don't know if in the sense that
I agree.
It's sort of, and in a way, so if FPL were pricing players now, what would Jota be? 9 million? Would that be?
I think that's
8.5, 9 million?
He'd be roughly with Son's sort of kind of level or price, or maybe 500,000 less, maybe. But I think you're right there, and we found that out with in the past with players like Kane and Mahrez when they had their breakthrough seasons. No one ever captained them, did they? Because of their price, nothing else. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think a few people might have done this, but I'll hold my hands up. I remember benching Kane versus Chelsea.
I did exactly.
But the reason it was because if he was a 10 million player and he'd have been revalued for his season, I probably wouldn't have done it. It's mad, isn't it, how price can impact decisions? So I actually, we need to start thinking of Jota as a 9 million option, because that's really, or maybe a little bit less, but he is performing at that sort of level. And I think if he is cemented in the team, I think, he's definitely somebody worth looking at. What about this? So from Liverpool, you would go ultra cheap and go for Jota. I don't want to say cover, but he would be your person of preference from Liverpool.
Yes, definitely. And just a couple of other points on Jota, just while we're there, right? So we don't know really how Liverpool's attack is going to go forward with Jota in there as well.
Yeah.
Jota could take away Salah's points, right? He could offer more points to Firmino or Mane, for example. So Salah wasn't there on the weekend, and Firmino had the most shots he's had in a long time, right? So I don't think we can expect Salah to just still be the exact same Salah when Jota's on the pitch. Jota's a very greedy player as well, which is great for FPL. He shoots on sight. He's very, very quick. So I think that is just another thing to think about. I'm not saying take out Salah, right? I'm not saying don't go for Salah, but I do think that Jota, alongside everything else you get with that in terms of budget freed up, is a good alternative.
I just think Mr. A's just put in the chat about the combination of Jota and Salah and Mane. I agree. Double Liverpool midfield could be a really, really good move. In fact, I'll go a step further. I think a Liverpool triple up in these next few fixtures could be key, because Liverpool, they're joint top. They're second on goal difference, aren't they? They're going to be going for the title, and I think they're going to probably go out to outscore teams as well. We've seen, I mean, they beat a very good Leicester side comfortably the weekend. So I don't think there were bad fixtures for Liverpool. I think they're capable of breaking down and scoring against anybody. So, and actually, you'd probably be more confident, and this is probably one of the big factors for me here, is that I'll be more confident in Salah and Jota having minutes than potentially picking the Man City player who's going to haul. So I can see the merits of that. Definitely the Liverpool double up. What about, we haven't talked about Chelsea yet. They're going pretty well. And you've got Werner, haven't you? Is that, I'm not making that up, am I?
No, you're not. I'm actually thinking about taking him out. So I've held him, I think, since game week 1 actually. But I'll go into why in a bit. But their fixtures do turn now. I think Werner personally is a better option than Ziyech, as he proved on the weekend. He's got the penalties. He was so unlucky not to return, multiple returns as well. Their fixtures do shift a little bit now. So they're home to Spurs, then they've got Leeds, and they've got Everton, Wolves, West Ham and Arsenal. So they haven't got those easier games. It's going to be a real, this next 6 games for me is going to be a real test. I still think Werner and Ziyech are really good value.
The thing that puts me off Chelsea attack anyway at the moment is the rotation, because we've got 8 league games in about 30 days. Yeah. So it span end of November to start first week in January. You've then got League Cup, Champions. Is this the last time of the Champions League? But there's a lot of fixtures in there anyway. So Chelsea, I mean, last night you could see Frank using up all of his 5 changes. I think he seems to have settled on that 4-3-3. So that means there's only 3 spots for Ziyech, Abraham, Werner, Pulisic, potentially Havertz if he plays him there. So I think he's just going to manage the minutes and use his squad throughout December. And that makes me a little bit nervous. And I think the other factor with Chelsea is they're looking very good attack-wise. And, I do think they could offer value. But I would worry about... would you captain them as well? Because have they got any fixtures that jump out for captaincy in the near future? Probably not. Where I do think Chelsea could be good, though, is defensively. I think they've looked exceptional with Thiago Silva, with Mendy in goal. So, I think you've got double. I'm almost like praising your team too much here.
I'm loving it. Everything you're saying.
Get Robertson. You've got go invest in Chelsea defence. I need to calm down a little bit. But I do think Chelsea defence could be good to look at. But I do sort of agree with you. I thought Werner was. Another one really unlucky not to haul versus Newcastle.
He was.
And, I think it's probably kicking the teeth when he got taken off after his goal was ruled out by VAR.
And then he played last night as well then. So, I think they're good value. I'm thinking of taking him out. I normally wouldn't, but I have got, a plan which we'll talk about when we get to our teams. I think a thing I would like to say is I think you need to work out which 2 or 3 premiums you can't live without, right? What are your 2 or 3? So if I say mine, for example, mine are Fernandes, because, as you just said, I've had him since game week 1. I will have him all season, bar injury. My other one generally is KDB. Okay, I'm kind of a little bit wavery, but I do think these next games, they've got to go and win these games. They absolutely have to, right? So I think he's another one. My third one is Son. And again, it's for kind of value sort of purposes. And if you look at Spurs' run now, so the next few games, they've got Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace, Liverpool, Leicester and Wolves, right? They've got some really hard games. Now I fancy, as I as I mentioned last week, Son tends to get more points against the better teams who leave space in behind than Kane. Kane's a bully. Kane will, he tends to sit deeper against these teams. He'll still get points, right? He'll still get the odd assist. He get the odd goal. I personally can't see Kane scoring 2 or 3 against any of these teams. Whereas Son's 1 goal is worth 11 points, right? If they have a clean sheet, I think this is where Son, Bruno, and KDB really come into their own. Is when they get the goal and get the clean sheet. 11 points compared to a lot of the time when Kane scores, Vardy scores, they only end up on 6 points, right? So I think there's so much value up front.
Well, I think when we were speaking prior to coming on air, one of the points you made is you really fancy the midfielders in the premium bracket. So if you were going to go, because Son is a little bit cheaper in terms, he's below 10 million. So if you were looking at 10 million plus to have throughout the whole December period, and I'm giving you another wild card because you wasted your other one earlier. So who would you go for?
One, I didn't waste it, but I would actually go for Bruno, KDB, and Son, and the reason for that is because
and then spread the funds.
I want to spread the funds, and I want 13, 14 playing players over this period. So we'll look at my team in a bit, but that's my plan, right? So I'm going to move to something along the lines of Bamford and Calvert-Lewin and Watkins up front, have a really good midfield 5, and have 3 or 4 really good defenders in there as well, and that's my plan. There's a big risk right now having Salah.
So I'll actually answer the question and give you 10 million plus players that I would go for. So
you do it.
I think we've said Bruno. I think we're unanimous on that. He's just the gift that keeps on giving, and he always gets 2 tries at penalties. So yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think Salah for me, and I never thought I would say this. And I'll tell you, I think I'm very tempted to double up or treble up at Liverpool as soon as I can. But what I like about Salah is I think he's probably had his break with everything that's gone on. I think he'll play, and he's so selfish, and the penalty thing is such a huge thing. It's something I completely underestimated. He's got 4 goals in open play this season. That says it all. But he's got 8 already. So I think I would go Bruno, Salah. The third one's really tough, and it will be between De Bruyne or Vardy. And I think you've made a compelling case for De Bruyne. I think I would probably go for Salah, Bruno, De Bruyne would be the 3 that I would go for. I think your argument on the midfielders is right.
So James Harding asks in the chat, I think for most people it boils down to Salah versus KDB to bring. So it sounds like your Salah above KDB by the sound of it. If you just had a direct choice.
Okay, so another thing to mention, and this could change, but last season City were a different animal. They were consistent. I don't think they haven't averaged an XG of above 2. I don't think for a long period of time. And KDB was absolutely bossing. Same with Trent. They were bossing the expected assist charts. There was nobody else in sight of them. When you look at it this season, I think KDB is about 4th or 5th. He's quite far down now. He might improve as things go on, but I don't think his numbers are at the same level as they were last season. Plus, he was 9.5 million. He was like the Son equivalent at the start of last season, whereas now he's big boy prices. And I think what I would say with KDB, if you're gonna captain him, go for it. Yeah. That is a no-brainer. And if you believe in City, and they've got really, really good fixtures, and if you believe in City, go for it. What I would say, though, is from my perspective, and why I would be tempted to go away from them, is with Salah, with Bruno, they've been proving it this season. They've been, we know both are guaranteed on penalties. KDB might lose them to Aguero. We don't know. We haven't had that confirmed yet. And I just think with Liverpool, their fixtures are really, really good. It's just the only reason people aren't looking at them is just Cities are just even better. But Liverpool could, I mean, they've got Fulham. I even think the Wolves game they could win comfortably, considering what they did to Leicester. And they got a lovely run over December. So, yeah, I'm going to go Salah over KDB.
Okay, well, I'm the opposite. I'm KDB over Salah. So that's put that to bed then. We did just have a quick question in the chat around Sterling. So FPL Geordie, thoughts on Sterling? Great fixtures start this game week. I think on Sterling, he hasn't done it yet this season. For me, Sterling seems to perform well when he's had a rest. He normally performs well right at the start of the season. After restart, for example, as well, he played really, really well. But against these teams that are going to block defend as well, he's not going to have any real chance to use his pace and get in behind, which is another reason why I like De Bruyne as well, because De Bruyne is just going to be picking the ball up on the edge of the area all game, right, and just swinging in balls, having shots. What do you think?
Do you not think he'll be motivated to get his England place back, or having lost it to Grealish? Do you not think he'll be? No, Grealish is understudy.
Yeah, no, I think I don't think it suits Sterling. I think Sterling's I wouldn't captain Sterling. I suppose that's the key point for me here. And when you're looking at your premiums, is would you captain him? So I would captain Bruno as I did last week. I would captain Son as I did the week before, and I would captain De Bruyne. I would obviously captain Salah as well, right? But
I think Sterling's quite streaky. I've always found.
Yeah.
And he can go through. He had a spell, didn't he, post-COVID, after the restart, where he had like 3 or 4 game weeks where there were a couple of really, really high scores in there.
Yeah, he was unplayable, wasn't he, for a while?
He was unplayable. The problem I find with him this season, looking at the stats, he's not anywhere near the top in a lot of the key metrics. So that puts me off, and he's very expensive.
He is
so
expensive.
I think there's better options for cheaper, personally.
Agree. Let's just have a quick look at the Fantasy Football Hub's predicted points of the next 6 games. Salah is predicted to score the most points combined over the next 6 games. De Bruyne is second. Sterling is third. Mane is fourth. And Aubameyang, this is the point last week where I had cramp when I said Aubameyang in the predicted points. He's actually, with the fixtures that they have, he's actually 5th here. But it does kind of back up the whole Salah versus De Bruyne versus Sterling argument. And we haven't really mentioned Mane, who I think he's been looking dangerous. He just hasn't quite got the returns, has he?
Yeah, I was a frustrated Mane owner on Sunday night. I thought he looked good, and I thought he could have scored. And the one he should have scored is, and you really fancied him, is when he went through and you thought he had the opportunity to bend it in the top corner.
100%.
And the amount of times I've seen him do that.
Yeah.
But obviously, because he was in my team and not many other people's, he thought, you know what? Let's give Kasper Schmeichel. But that's what I think went through his head, But yeah, it was, and then he had a few chances. I think Mane is a good option. The penalties swing me now towards Salah, because there's been a lot more than I anticipated, and I think they'll score fairly similar, excluding pens. So I'd go Salah.
So just to wrap up this section then, the 3 that you would pick are Fernandes, Salah and KDB. And my 3 would be Fernandes, KDB and Son, and I would spread those funds elsewhere. I think that's kind of wrapped up that's probably a fair assessment of where we are.